Jamal Adams, Jets safety, wants out of New York. He had, I think, a very creative approach last night. He sent a message on Twitter to fellow safety Marcus May, who arrived in the NFL the same year he did. And in the message, he said to Marcus May, "I'm going to miss balling with you the most," which is, it's almost like he's trying to, as Pete Demolitis suggested last night, speak a trade into existence. He's just acting like he's not going to be back. Now, Chris, I don't know that that's the best approach, because I think one of the things that will help the Jets get their best possible trade offer is to make people think that they are going to keep Jamal Adams. So there's a certain point where Jamal Adams has to maybe cooperate with that process, although it didn't keep Stephon Diggs from being traded. It didn't keep Jalen Ramsey from being traded. It didn't keep Antonio Brown from being traded. So, Jamal Adams wants out. There are 8 teams that he reportedly is interested in or would be willing to be traded to, although I think at the end of the day he would be willing to be traded to anyone but the Jets. I just think he doesn't want to play for the Jets anymore. Your thoughts on how it got to this point, and just as a preliminary matter, whether it's even salvageable. Is there a way to fix this, and should the Jets want to fix it?
I do think it's salvageable. I do. I think, the things I know about, I've been around Jamal Adams a few times. First off, he's an intense guy, loves football. You can feel the intensity of the human being when you're around him. He loves talking the sport. He's very passionate. Know he works hard. Always hear those type of things from people in the Jets organization. Can he go off the handle on a given day, maybe in the facility, and be a little distraction? Yeah, he can. Those are the things that I've been told through the grapevine, and I get that. Listen, there's a lot of players in the NFL are like that. There's a lot of great players in the NFL that are like that. They wear their emotions on their sleeve. So it's tough. So I don't think it's broken yet. I think the biggest thing, too, for me is, hey, Jamal Adams is clearly the best safety in football, as you've heard me say. And I do think he is one of those guys that, oh, no, he's not just like the next guy up, so he deserves to be the highest paid at the position. He is clearly the most talented. He is a focal point of any defense, and he should be paid like the highest paid guy in football at that position. The big thing is, Mike, to me, I just think we're too late into the game, into the offseason. Like, I don't see long-term contracts happening in this type of situation. I don't see trades happening right now in this type of situation in the current environment we are. I mean, are you really going to be a team, right now with the uncertainty of this year and maybe even next year, if you're being realistic about what's going on, that you're going to trade away assets or give away money or a new contract and all those things? I just think there's a lot of moving parts. So I'm hoping it's salvageable. I love watching him play. He's the best player on the New York Jets, but I do think he's dancing a very fine line of, dancing his butt out of favor with the Jets altogether, where they do want to just get him out of there.
And apparently if he gets his trade, he won't be insisting on the long-term deal that he's been insisting on from the Jets. But just because the Texans did it with Laramie Tunsil and the Rams did it with Jalen Ramsey doesn't make it right to give up major assets for a guy in trade and not sign him to a new contract ASAP. You give the guy more leverage in your contract talks once you have made this gigantic investment in getting him. For the Texans, it was a couple of first-round picks. Now they also got Kenny Stills, but Laramie Tunsil was the centerpiece of that trade, and he had great leverage. He did a 3-year, $66 million contract earlier this year because they didn't get him to do a contract on the way in the door. Jalen Ramsey, what in the world are the Rams going to do? They gave up 2 1s and a 4, and he's got all the leverage. So, I agree with what you're saying here. Although it's not unprecedented that he would be traded without a new contract, I don't think this is some new trend, right? They say it's a copycat league. This is something you do not want to copy. Do not copy the Texans and the Rams when it comes to giving up multiple first-round picks and not getting an extension on the way through the door. And so, and the other side of it, too, is to the extent that the word is out that, Jamal may be a little temperamental and maybe a little hard to handle.
Yeah.
Like, is he suddenly going to change when you have him on your team? And you better have a plan in place. I know every coach thinks I can deal with that. Well, it's easy to say I can deal with that until you have to deal with that. And look, I think he's one of the players that's good enough that you justify. Because like you said, plenty of players are temperamental. When he's one of the best players in football, you find a way to look the other way, like coaches and organizations have done over the years repeatedly.
Right. That's exactly right. And I think, the other thing, and really more times than not, teams appreciate that type of passion, but they just don't like when it filters over to social media or being said on, the biggest radio station here in the New York area where he's made a few controversial comments or moments there that have certainly, got a little rise in the reaction of the Jets fans and the Jets organization. Those things, like, you can deal with it, but you don't want to deal with it for the most part if you're an organization. You'd like the leader of your team to be a guy that's always positive and everything like that. But here's like the other angle, Mike, that I worry about with, even for Jamal Adams. I worry about the player, like the Yannick Ngakoue effect, right? Like, don't start talking to yourself like you're out of town and I'm getting out of here and I don't want to be here, and start hurting the Jets' ability to get good trade value for you, to now where, yes, you've made it so clear that you don't want to go back, that you've backed the organization to a corner to where they're going to go, well, wait, now that you've done this and caused such a stir, you're lessening our ability to get a great trade value for you. And now we're going to hold steadfast and sit here until we feel like that value has gone up. And I think he's got to worry about that too here. So you can't be too controversial and too out there saying you want to get out there, because you're going to upset the people with the Jets and they're not going to get what they want in this matter.
And also, and look, a lot of this stuff, some will say it matters, some will say it doesn't matter, but the CBA has been reconfigured to make it harder to hold out. It's more expensive now. It's $50,000 a day in training camp. And also, it used to be a guy had to show up within 30 days before the start of the regular season to get his credit toward free agency for that year. Under the new CBA, if you just fail to show up for the start of camp, you lose your credit toward free agency. We have seen guys not care about it, like Aaron Donald, like Ezekiel Elliott last year, like Chris Johnson several years ago, because at this point the goal is to get a contract, not to get a year of credit toward free agency. But for a guy like Jamal Adams, who's got 3 years of service and needs one more to have credit for free agency, if he doesn't show up on time this year, he doesn't get that fourth year, but he's still under contract for 2 more. So, I mention all that because we have to take seriously the possibility he's going to hold out.
Yeah,
and he's
the
got
dicey
the right to
situation.
hold out. And this is the annual point in the calendar where I mentioned for the first time, I don't want to hear people say he's signed a contract. There are 2 contracts that apply, his contract with the team and the league's contract with the union. And under the league's contract with the union, he has rights to withhold services under certain circumstances. It's just more difficult now than it used to be under that contract, but he does have the right to not show up if he chooses to do so for strategic reasons or for any reason. So, he's done. In his mind, the bridge has been crossed and burned with the Jets. Now, can that bridge be rebuilt? Do the Jets even want to rebuild it? See, that's the other thing that we don't know.
I know, we don't know.
The fact that it's gotten to this point, do the Jets, is it really worth it? We saw, and I mentioned this on Friday when Big Cat and I talked about it, Adam Gase entering his last year as coach of the Dolphins. Jarvis Landry gone, and Ndamukong Suh gone, Mike Pouncey gone. And I think to a certain extent, 95% of his problems were coming from 5% of his roster, and he just, you want guys who want to be there. The problem is, if you let everyone who says I want out go, you have created an easy path out of the maze. You know those mazes that they used to put in the newspaper, and you can't. This is an easy path. Doors here, doors here, straight line. All I got to say is I don't want to be here. So that's the challenge for them. You don't want to create a precedent that makes it too easy to let guys leave, but you also don't want somebody who doesn't want to be there, because you need a locker room full of guys who want to be there, Chris.
Yeah, well, it's a delicate situation. It's a big year for the Jets. I mean, we know that, right? I think it's a big year for Adam Gase, a lot of people within the organization. You don't want a lot of distractions going on with your football team. And listen, quite honestly, if you're a Jets fan or a member of the Jets organization, you'd like Jamal Adams to be on your team in a crucial year, and especially I think if you're Adam Gase, who's a guy that, like we said, this is a big year for his career, and whether he wants to continue to be the head coach of the New York Jets and everything like that. Jamal Adams is the best player on the Jets football team. He's the biggest difference maker they got on the defensive side of the ball. So I would have a hard time believing that you can't mend this bridge and build it back together. If they found a way to make him $15 million a year, big money, something like that, He would be the guy I think you can deal with a little of this stuff going on because he's so talented. You don't want to let a guy like this, out of your locker room, off your team.
If we stipulate for the purposes of this conversation that he is the best safety right now in football, here's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah.
On the scale of best at their position, from best quarterback down to best long snapper, where does best safety fit as it relates to the priority that we have to keep? He's the best safety. We have to keep him. How important is having the best safety versus having the best quarterback or having the best long snapper? Where is it on that spectrum?
It's a great question. I think it's in this day, in the modern day NFL, it's pretty high up there, Mike. Okay, we know quarterback's one. What's after that? Tackle and pass rusher, right? We'll say that's 2 and 3, somewhere in there, whatever order you want to put it in. Safety, this day and age in the NFL, with all the great tight ends, all the offenses who do things at the line of scrimmage, Jamal Adams fits like more than one position. That's the beauty of these type of guys. So, I think you could argue and sit here and go, no, this, safety, a guy like Jamal Adams is in the conversation for maybe one of the 4th or 5th most important positions in all of the sport right now. You see a guy like Bill Belichick every year, he's collecting them, safeties, because of their ability to match up with different guys, backs out of the backfield, slot receivers, the George Kittles and Travis Kelce's of the world. Hey, now you got to fill the B gap and tackle Ezekiel Elliott like you're a linebacker. Those are rare guys. And a Greg Williams defense that asks a lot of the safeties and really knows how to utilize them, that's where I think he's very, very important. And, that's where I can understand them wanting to pay him big money and not let a guy like that out of the organization.
6th overall pick in 2017, and we mention various franchises when it comes to the could have had Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson conversation. In fairness to the likes of the Chicago Bears, I think we need to point out the Jets could have had Patrick Mahomes, the Jets could have had Deshaun Watson instead of Jamal Adams, and how different things would have been. But
all
Matt
the Jets fans right now are saying, "Shut up, you jerk!"
Coordinating producer Matt Casey just said something in my ear that I don't think he wants me to actually repeat verbatim on the air.
He's a Jets fan, though. Let everybody know that. Yes.
Yeah, he's a big Jets fan. Yeah. They know what we mean. So anyway, I think that's part of this too. Now, Big Cat and I talked on Friday about the fact that the GM now, Joe Douglas, has no attachment. See, it's harder for Ryan Pace with Mitchell Trubisky because he's the guy in Chicago who drafted the guy at number 2, traded up to get him, and left Mahomes and Deshaun Watson on the board, and it's apples to apples at quarterback. Joe Douglas can just say, well, this is Mike McCagnon's problem. I don't feel like I have to make this work. I feel like I can take this asset that we have and flip it for whatever the best offer is that we can get. And there's not that emotional attachment that you would have to step away from as the guy who drafted Jamal Adams. So I think that's a factor too.
Mike, realistically, I mean, when do you think we're going to see a trade or a new big contract in the NFL? Anytime, like when's the next time you think we're going to see that? Like, I don't think we're going to see it until we're like, we know there's a game's about to be played. Like, I just don't think it's going to happen until we get a little farther down the road. I think teams are going to be very reluctant to do any of that kind of stuff.
There are more than a dozen guys who have been tagged this year and who are in that July 15 window to do a long-term deal or not. I would just like to think that with that many different teams involved, that at least one of them is going to say, we're more comfortable with the financial uncertainty of signing this guy to a long-term deal than we are comfortable knowing that we're going to move to year 2 of this year-to-year proposition that allows a guy to move on in year 3 potentially because we really want this guy to be around. So one of those teams is going to do it, I think. So we'll see something by July 15. Trades, I don't know. I think we got to get the training camp.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.